Hey everybody, Grant Diggles here with Health Professionals Alliance, and I am your host with our show called Real Docs, where we talk with real doctors, we cover real topics, and we spotlight real solutions. If you're an independent practice or group in the medical or dental fields, and you're looking for a solution to thrive in the market and keep your independence and protect yourself, HPA has a message for you. Don't get consolidated. Instead, join the HPA family with other independent practices and groups across the country in both medical and dental. Protect your independence, control your patient care, thrive in the market, and build your wealth. If you're interested in learning more about this exciting model that's growing nationally with independent practices across the country, you can visit us at hpamembers.com. We are going to be talking today about real solutions, and the group that I am highlighting today, I believe will bring real value to you, and I'm excited to speak with them. So without further ado, let's get started. As I mentioned before, we are speaking with Bottleneck Distant Assistants with Dr. David Lorino and Jamie J. As I mentioned, this is a real solutions show. We're going to be spotlighting what they do today. I'm excited to speak with these guys because I believe that they have a solution that really applies to the market right now, given the fact that we're dealing with a pandemic or maybe post-pandemic. I'm not really sure what the category is at this point, but I want to welcome my two guests today, Dr. David Lorino and Jamie J. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing great.
So I was really excited to speak with you about what Bottleneck Distant Assistants is because the nature of the market right now is kind of a concerning market. I'm in healthcare. Obviously, Dr. Lorino, you're in healthcare. But we're always running into situations right now that's really common that we hear from our members at HPA is we are struggling with our staffing. We're having a hard time keeping people. We don't have enough people to do everything that needs to be done. And I'm not really sure what the reason is in the market. There's a lot of different reasons, but it seems like everybody's having the same problem. So I was really excited to bring you guys in and talk to you today about what you're offering in the market. So Dr. Lorino, I'll let you go first, and then I'm going to move over to you, Jamie. Just give a quick background on yourself, and then I'll let you guys jump into what Bottleneck is and how it can help.
Absolutely. Thanks, Grant. So I'm a practicing foot and ankle specialist in the Phoenix area. I've been doing it for 22 years now. All private practice, never worked in a consolidated group or hospital setting. It's always been private practice for me. I think I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am a physician. So that's kind of how I always felt, I think. And so, HPA seemed to be a great fit for what we're doing in our practice. And I think it was a nice synergy. Once Grant and I had an opportunity to meet, we felt like what we offered at Bottleneck could be a great solution for the clients that HPA has now and moving into the future. So we're HPA clients, we're happy HPA clients, and I've been working with Jamie now for going on 3+ years now with this solution that we created, and we can get into the genesis and all the ins and outs of it here in a little bit, but I'll let Jamie introduce himself and give some background.
Awesome. Let's hear it, Jamie.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Lorino, and thanks, Grant, for having us. This is super exciting. Congratulations to you and to HPA for what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. Dr. Lorino, like he said, we met about 3.5 years ago. I went out to the Phoenix area, and we sat down with a whiteboard for the all weekend long while my wife was out on a little rental bird, those little scooters driving around. And we were looking at the world of these private practices and what was the most challenging thing. And we found a bunch of turnover in practice was pretty consistent. A lot of people were using these roles as stepping stones to go on and advance their career. So every year, 2 years, there would be a pretty constant turnover, and it's really hard for these practices to establish any kind of growth trajectory if they're continuing to train people. And my expertise is in systems, processes, and workflows, and so we kind of combined Dr. Loreno's knowledge for private practice and my systems administration knowledge, and kind of put those two together, and I think formed a neat little opportunity for private practice.
No, I think that's great. I remember meeting Dr. Loreno for the first time. It was one of the presentations. We flew out to the Phoenix area and we gave a presentation, and Dr. Loreno attended that presentation, and we connected afterwards. And he's like, so, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm a podiatrist. I'm really interested in the HPA model, interested in being a member, but I also do this other thing in distance assistance. And so we talked about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is definitely a solution that HPA needs to consider to offer this value to all of the members across the country as they find that they need these things. And as I mentioned before, it seems like everybody's kind of running into the same problems. They're dealing with the same issues, and staffing is a major concern. And one of the things you just mentioned, Jamie, is the high turnover, right? For whatever reason, staff are turning over like crazy. The market's a little nuts with trying to retain staff, and people are making moves to another employer for an extra $2 or $3 an hour, sometimes even less than that, because they can right now. And so it creates a lot of unique challenges for practices to get the rudimentary stuff, the operational items in their practice done that are really important. And they do create bottlenecks in the process, which is why I love the name. So when David and I talked about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to learn about this model. And I'm proud to say that Bottleneck is now a strategic partner with HPA. And so we're like, we got to get this out to as many people as possible because we really love it. So with that said, what is Bottleneck exactly?
So Bottleneck Distant Assistants, or Bottleneck Medical, basically what we are is we certify and train what we call our distant assistants. So they will work remotely, all HIPAA compliant, very high level of security, but they will work remotely for private practices in roles like insurance verification, new patient coordinators, medical scribes, things like that, where there doesn't need to be someone in the office, but we train them specifically in 3 different areas. Number one is we train them on systems and processes, because what we found, and Dr. Loreno will probably talk about the Michael Jordan effect, but we train them on systems and processes. We also train them on delegation so that they can delegate tasks. And then the third and final thing that we train them on is the intimate based relationships with that practice to maintain the integrity of the brand specific to that practice. So a lot of times, if someone leaves an organization, there's a gap to be filled. With our assistants, what they're able to do is they learn what that practice is all about. They learn the tone, the voice, the vision, the mission. And many of the private practices, they lack systems. They're not documented. And so our assistants will document all of that with the understanding of maintaining the integrity of that practice's voice.
Yeah, that particular one right there is super powerful, because I hear stories all the time from practices that have come to rely on certain staff in their office to do specific things. And to the point where if they were to lose that person, it would be catastrophic, right? And we see that these practices, because of all this turnover that's happening, and we get these calls all the time from members that are like, oh my gosh, they call their regional manager with HPA and they're like, Betty, who's been working for me for 20 years, just put in her 2 weeks. And then she used 2 weeks of vacation to just leave on Friday last week. And the problem that people run into is that person they've been relying on so much has their own systems and processes they've created, right? But they didn't document any of it. So once they leave, now you're stuck with, what the heck was this person doing? We know they were valuable, but we don't know how to replace them. I mean, getting a replacement's hard enough, but putting somebody in and training them and replacing them is even harder. So I think that systems and processes aspect you just talked about is so critical. So, and I've heard this multiple times. Actually, one of my clients on the anesthesia side here in Portland just had that happen to them, and she has 3 boxes of stuff from this person that is now gone, and they are basically trying to reverse engineer whatever the heck this person did to try to make it work and try to figure it out. So that one really resonates with me because I see it a lot. And I'm really curious though, Jamie, you said the Michael Jordan effect. So David, can you explain exactly what that is?
Absolutely. So it's just technically what Jamie was talking about, right? It's about the systems, the operations, protocols, workflows within the practice. So I think all of us have had, or at least at some point had, a Michael Jordan in our practice. And that's the person who can pretty much do anything, right? I mean, if you want them to go out and score 50 on a night, they're going to score 50 on that night, right? They just have the ability to do pretty much anything within the practice. Now, that can be an asset or a detriment to your practice, depending on what you do as far as documentation is concerned. So that's basically where an operations manual comes into play. So if you've got that person who has documented everything that they do, which by the way, they should, I know it takes a little time, and sometimes it's a little painful to do this, but Jamie taught me this. He said, think things as if when you do them, as if it's the last time you're ever going to do it, which basically means just document it so that the next person that rolls in, they could pick it up and go, oh, I can read through this. I can watch that video. And within a matter of 2 minutes, I should know exactly how to do this. It's a recipe book for your practice, right? Yeah. So that's the Michael Jordan effect. And we've all been there, right? Where the Michael Jordan has left the practice and now everybody's hair's on fire. Oh my gosh, what do we do? Who do we turn to? How are we going to run the practice? Oh my, you feel like the world's coming to an end. So in order to decrease the stress within our practices, it's all about documentation. And every position should have documented steps and processes in order to make the process for that individual super simple and super easy. It's also great for training, right? Because, all too often, and I'll be the first one to admit it, as physicians, we just say, we need somebody at the front desk. We need somebody in the back office. Just hire them and put them on the phone and let them start answering well, they don't even know how you answer the phone in your practice. They don't know what to say, but we all think it's plug and play, right? But it really boils down to training. And I think those documented pieces within the practice are part of your training manuals as well. So it eliminates a lot of stress within our practices. And, that's where distant assistants can be a nice blend for a practice, is because we actually help to systematize and document those positions within the practice. So they're really a tangible asset for the practice.
Yep. And to be clear, you're one of the owners of Bottleneck, right, David? But you are actually using Bottleneck as well in your practice. Is that correct?
I have from day one. I was the beta, and Jamie and I said, look, we got to try it out on me to see if this is something that we can roll out, right? And so, I was the first individual when I had a medical scribe. And as most physicians know, documenting what we do for a patient is critical. And the unfortunate thing is that takes a lot of time because EHRs are not as efficient as most people think. You got a 6-page progress note for a pimple, and people are like, why do I have to read through all this crap? Well, it's instilled by the insurance companies and the payers that if you want to get paid, this stuff has to be a 6-page progress note. So I was finding that I was getting burnout and stressed and frustrated with that process because at the end of the day, 5 p.m., I now had to sit there till 7 p.m. to finish my progress note. And, I really enjoyed time with my family and my kids and my hobbies and all the things I love to do, but I wasn't able to do them as frequently as I wanted. So I said, something's got to change. And so Jamie and I worked on a scribe. I trained the scribe. Took me about 30 to 40 days to train my scribe and get him up to speed. And at the end of that, I was leaving my clinic at 5:05, 5:10 maybe, so I was really buying back my time. I was getting 2 hours per day, which equated to 500 hours per year. And, what would you do with an extra 500 hours per year, right? So to me, it was a no-brainer. Shortly thereafter, we added another scribe, then an insurance verification specialist, then a new patient coordinator. So I had 4 distant assistants within my practice who were handling a lot of the back end, pardon my French, BS that we had to deal with on a day-to-day basis, right? And it's just non-productive stuff that was bogging our clinic down, but we were able to outsource that to our DAs, and my physicians loved it. Our staff loved it. I think our patients loved it because the response from the staff and the physicians was more relational than just transactional, where it's like, oh my gosh, let's get these people in and get them out. So it really changed the way that we ran our practice. And we still, to this day, use distant assistants in our practice. And I will until the day I retire.
Well, because it sounds like you basically did 4 things. You got back time, you got back money, right? You became more efficient, and you improved the culture of the practice because now the in-house staff at the office were not running around ragged chickens, like with their heads cut off, because they were trying to just jump through all of the hoops that the insurance companies were requiring and all the documentation. They could actually have that time to breathe, take a break, spend a little extra time with patients. And it sounds like it affected your practice in all 4 ways. Does that about sum it up?
100%. And I'll even add, it got back sanity and overall quality of life, which I think are critical.
Yeah. And who wants more of that? Right?
Yeah.
Especially in healthcare, where it just seems like everybody is grinding right now, especially with the pandemic and stress. A lot of people are making decisions. I don't know if I want to manage my practice anymore because it's just too much of a headache. And maybe I'll consolidate into a hospital, or maybe I'll sell to a PE firm or something because I'm just so tired of the management. And it sounds like this solution could be very positive for them, and not only not making that decision and losing their independence, but also finding some of the joy of actually being a doctor, getting that back in their life as well. So one of the questions I have, I'm going to punt this one to you, Jamie, is the scribes or the distant assistants themselves. So what is that, the distant part? Where are you sourcing them from, and where are they coming from, and how does that work?
Thank you, Grant. That's a great question. So what we've done is we've been able to kind of partner with different areas around the world. Now that technology has advanced so much, it's pretty much shrunk the world. So what that does for a lot of private practices is gives you an opportunity to experience a larger talent pool. And these distant assistants are working remotely in different countries that are college educated. They could be from the Philippines, they could be from South Africa, they could be from all around the world. We focus probably mostly right now in the Philippines. South Africa is now, we're seeing it's doing really well. But one of the things I want to go back to really fast too is I understand how chaotic it could be in practices handling 20, 30, 40, 50 different patients in a day. Where do you find the time to do this? And a lot of people said, like Dr. Lorino, I don't have time to train. Let's just get somebody in. So that I'm clear, I've helped hire over 1,000 people in the 15 years that I've been doing this. And one of my friends said, Jamie, you've been social distancing before social distancing was a thing, because I've been working remotely for that long. But I've learned a lot over that time. And one of the biggest mistakes that I think we make as business owners, private practices, things like that, is just trying to get someone in to fill the seat without really a game plan, knowing that when you hire somebody new, there's going to be more work and it will probably get a little bit more stressful. But if you're like so many other people that are experiencing a high turnover rate, or not able to keep people there for a long extended period of time, the likelihood is that the ball was dropped in the very beginning to where you didn't spend enough time because you were too busy doing other things. And this is a big fight and a big struggle for a lot of us, and trying to figure out, okay, how much time am I actually going to have to dedicate to this person? This person should know everything. And no matter how familiar they are with a specific EHR or their role and their responsibilities, as soon as they come into your private practice, you're unique. Everybody runs their practice a little bit differently, even if they're using the same EHR or something like that. And so spending time with that person, like Dr. Marino spent 30 to 40 days just with his scribe, but it paid dividends in the long run. So he did spend some more time. His staff spent some more time in the beginning. And the other cool thing is too, once they do get trained up, you have the confidence to delegate maybe some more responsibility to them, maybe some crossover. If someone leaves on vacation, they can help fulfill that role and stuff. So I thought this was really important. And it's a key thing to know that bringing somebody on is good. It could be exciting. Man, I'm finally going to get there. But at the same time, know that it is going to be a little bit more challenging, because you really want to bring them into your unique culture that you have at that private practice. Because a lot of people get into this thinking they're just going to get somebody already pre-trained and they're ready to go. And that's just not the case. So I do want to leave that little caveat there, knowing that when you bring somebody on, it's a little tougher, but oh man, 3 or 6 months down the road is going to come. Where would you like to be then, as opposed to where you are now?
Yeah, and you're going to get back what you put in, right? So there's this commitment to your practice and to the solutions and all the things that you need to solve. And I think a lot of people get in the habit of trying to, like you said, it's like they need somebody to do something, but they almost treat it like a Band-Aid solution. But by doing that and not actually going through the process of doing the due diligence necessary to ensure that that person's really trained, they really don't help themselves out. Like Dr. Lorino in his situation, by making that investment over the course of several months, it's those investments that give the ROI that we just talked about. Like, I'm getting more time back now, and I'm more efficient, and we're not getting denials in our claims as much anymore, because this is running like a well-oiled machine. And now the culture is changing. And I think you're right. People are always kind of looking for that. Like, if I'm going to pay for a service, then it has to come with some sort of a magic elixir that's going to solve my problem today. And I love that you put that perspective out there, that this is going to be some work and this is going to take some time. And probably you don't have any processes in place now. And that's the difference between the really great practices that enjoy their lives versus the practices that feel like they're just trying to stay above water because they're not putting the time and the training in the back end. And now you mentioned that some of these different locations across the country, you mentioned the Philippines, you mentioned South Africa. I remember talking to you earlier, Jamie, about this. And what are some of the strategies that, not the strategies, but the qualifications of these people that you bring on to distance assistants to provide this service? I heard something about a lot of them having nursing degrees or something like that. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Yes. Right now, especially, when we have a really in-depth vetting process, and basically what that means is we're checking for 3 different areas of criteria. What kind of an advanced degree they have, and the reason why is, especially like in the Philippines, all of their universities are taught in English. All of the advanced levels of education are taught in English. I've recently found out that nurses don't get paid for the first year after they graduate from nursing school. And a lot of them can't make it through that first year without any type of income. So they have a nice foundational understanding of the medical world, but they just have to learn about roles and responsibilities. And that's where we really dive in and help them. One big concern is security. That is a massive concern, especially with HIPAA compliance. Oh my gosh, one violation. can shut a practice down. I mean, it's incredible. So we perform technical checks. We send each of our assistants their own workstation. We load on malware and remote access so we can tie in with them, and we can actually trace where any vulnerabilities might appear, because if there's going to be a breach, the first thing practice is going to say is, oh, it's the remote people. They did something. And so we want to make sure, not only for our own reasons and to protect us and protect Bottleneck, but we want our practices that we work with, our clients, to know that, hey, we take this security, very, very seriously. And we want you to feel confident in knowing that any of this information is being protected. Again, we're dealing with human beings. Can we guarantee 100% that there's not going to be a vulnerability or a breach of some sort? Absolutely not. And for anybody that says that they can guarantee that, I would probably turn and run for the hills. That being said, though, in the 15 years I've been doing this, we've never had one instance of a breach or one instance of theft. And the other part of that you look into is that there's sometimes interoffice politics, and that can bring on a complete new opportunity for, I'm trying to say this as nice as possible, new opportunity for challenges. That is kind of alleviated when you have the remote staff, and we provide for that. That we are human beings, so we're social critters, but we have a community. We have people that we can talk to. We meet with every single one of the distant assistants monthly, just to answer their problems and be there for them, or whatever we can do. So that's a real benefit as well. And then I think the third thing, so we have the security and the tech checks. They're in the Philippines or they're in South Africa. What if they lose power? How do we get in touch with them? So we provide uninterrupted power supplies. We call them UPSs. We provide a lot of ways that we can say, okay, this person, something, but power just went out here. I just want to let you know, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is where systems and processes really come in. So what happens if this person goes on vacation or there's a power outage? How does that practice stay afloat? How do they operate? Well, they refer to the systems and processes so that you can continue working with a well-oiled machine.
One other thing I'd add to that too, Grant, is what happens when your practice's internet goes out or your business's internet goes out? What do you do? Right? Well, there's a thing called pen and paper, right? We're all of us on this call are old enough to know what those things are, but you got to have contingency plans and backups, right? And that's what Jamie's alluding to. So, it's no different than when the internet goes down in your office. What do you do?
Yeah, it's I'm really glad that you took the time, Jamie, to explain that, because when you think about distance assistants, and there's definitely other areas in the world where there's like graphic designer freelancers and things like that and stuff, but to get into the details of actually what you guys do to set them up for success, which then sets your clients up for success. I mean, that sounds that's actually more in depth and more involved than I even thought in speaking with you about it. So that was a great clarification for people that are like, well, what do? You just hire somebody and send them the cheapest laptop you can. And it's like, hey, you're working for this doc now in Tennessee. Good luck. It sounds like it's very well thought out, very organized, very intentional, very purposeful, especially like you said, with the HIPAA compliance and things like that, that we're all concerned about. It's kind of, HIPAA compliance is such an interesting thing because we know it's really important. And we also know that it's really hard to stay compliant with HIPAA. And so just knowing that you guys and Bottleneck is making the efforts to organize a team for your clients that has a lot of thought, a lot of due diligence in there is really impressive, because this is something new to me. And I've been talking to you guys about Bottleneck for a while. So if somebody was interested in picking up the Bottleneck service, what does the onboarding process look like for that particular client?
Do you want to take that, Dr. Lorino?
Go ahead, Jamie. That's fine.
Okay. So basically what happens is they would reach out to us. and we would have a conversation with them. It's basically a fact-finding conversation. We want to kind of understand where their biggest challenges lie, and then we set some expectations. There is a one-time onboarding fee that we charge, and that is so that we can go out and source a group of individuals that we'll be able to introduce to the practice. And what's nice about that too is the practice isn't taking the time, because it takes a lot of time to put an ad out and to interview and to do the background checks and the reference checks and vet them. And we kind of take that away. We do all of that on their behalf. We also get down, what kind of person are we going to be working with? Who's that point of contact there? What's their personality? And what would be the kind of the best personality to match with this person to bring them into this practice so that they're not kind of an outsider? Again, I go back to that culture model. It's really important to find a good fit. And we always say we can't teach personality, but we can definitely teach the role and the responsibilities within that, what the responsibilities for that person, what they have going on. So they may come into this position, have an unbelievable personality and really do good. And that's 90% of the battle. It's the details, those can be worked out. But that's probably what our biggest thing there. So that's what we do for the onboarding process. We introduce a minimum of 3 candidates per role. And we have somebody that leads that conversation. And then after that, if they want to move forward, we simply get a start date for them. We inform the person that's going to show up. And then that first meeting, we specially train that assistant to show up for that first meeting with the questions that they need to ask and confirmations that they need to do. And they start setting up the workflows as well. So they can set up follow-up meetings saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know, this is what you asked me to do. Is this correct? Just so that way we can get what's in here kind of out, and the level of expectations are going to be met.
No, that's great. And did you want to add something, David?
Yeah, I was going to also add, I think this is a really important part too, Grant, is that during the onboarding process and when practices are going through this, I think it's critical, whoever is the lead person on this, whether it's the physician or an office manager, that they introduce this new distant assistant to their team, and let them know up front early, right? Hey, we're looking at bringing on some outsourced or distant assistant individuals to help our clinic out, to help you out so that you're less stressed and overworked and burnout, et cetera. Because a lot of times, if they just say, okay, we hired a distant assistant, and people start going, who is this person and what do they do? And is my job being replaced? There's this scarcity mindset that happens within people, and intimidation that happens as well. So I think it's really important that they introduce the distant assistants early on and just say, hey, we're really looking to solidify our practice, whether it's front office, back office, or any other role that the clinic might need. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and one of the things that's most exciting for me on this this particular business model that you have is that you are positioned with HPA. So we are strategic partners. We've had the opportunity to look and delve into this, your particular model, and we're like, man, this is a really good fit. And I was just at an executive committee meeting with one of my clients, and they were complaining the whole time. They're like, they were frustrated because they couldn't get their pre-auths done in a reasonable amount of time to get those patients onto the schedule as quickly as possible. And this is not the first time they've complained about it. And I remember being in the last meeting with them because we provide anesthesia services for them. And I was like, oh man, they need Bottleneck. And the cool thing is that particular client of mine is also a member of HPA. So one of the cool things that we do with our members, and certainly have this relationship with Bottleneck, is, we negotiate discounts for our members. So our members are able to save money on a variety of different services that we offer. We have these strategic partnerships with Bottleneck, for example. And so I'm just really excited about getting your model out to people, especially in this particular market where I can't really think of a time where the need is greater than right now. for this type of service for practices that need to find more bandwidth and then, save the money, get more time, change your culture, be more efficient, all the things, Dr. Lorino, that you have experienced through Bottleneck. We want to get that gift out to our members, the discounts that we've negotiated with you to our members. We're just excited about the whole thing. So I want to reiterate that our members get discounts in this, but if you're not a member of HPA and you're interested in what HPA is doing, again, you can find us at hpamembers.com. But if you want to delve into what Bottleneck is doing, and certainly they can direct you back to HPA if you want to get more involved with what we're doing as well, because we're doing something really fun together with Bottleneck and other strategic partners out there at discounts. You can find Bottleneck at bottleneck.online. Pretty basic. Is there anything else you guys would like to add to this before we wrap up the show today? Or did I just take the words out of your mouth?
No, I just wanted to say thanks, Grant, for having us on and allowing us to introduce this to your community. Naturally, it's been a great fit for my practice in the past 3+ years. And I know it can be a great fit for a lot of other practices, especially the ones that are members of HPA. Those are the more progressive, innovative, and forward-thinking practices that want to take it to the next level, want to decrease their stress and burnout, want to pull back more time, money, energy, bandwidth, whatever they want. So I think it's just a whole nother opportunity for practices, because we know it's not getting easier. These insurance companies keep squeezing and grinding us. So we have to figure out solutions to help make our lives the best that they can be, get back that quality of life. And that was the genesis and the impetus for the creation of all of this. Was I was at that breaking point and I said, got to come up with a solution. And fortunately, a mutual friend of ours introduced me and Jamie together. And as they say, the rest is kind of history, right? Mm-hmm. So thanks again. Thanks for having us on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Would you like to wrap up with anything, Jamie, before we go?
Well, first and foremost, if you're not a member of HPA, I highly encourage you to reach out to Grant and the HPA team there, because I think having a network like this is fantastic. I'm a huge advocate for private practice, and to have this kind of support is amazing, with the introductions that Grant and his team can make and the discounts that you can make. It's an incredible resource. And Grant, I just want to say thank you so much for having Dr. Lorino and I on. And again, I just want to leave it with this. If do something as if it's the last time you're ever going to do it. Document. If you think you're about ready to hire, just make sure that you can identify the roles and responsibilities within your practice and make sure each one of those is documented down on paper. And if you can do that, I think you'll find that the organization, your AR will ultimately reduce. Your prior authorizations will start getting done. It just needs to be documented. It's such an important aspect of doing business. So again, Grant, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today and talking about this exciting solution. Again, HPA members who are already members, reach out to us. We want to introduce you to Bottleneck. And certainly if you want to reach out to these guys yourself, you can certainly, again, see them at bottleneck.online. And that's about it. So I think we're going to drive this thing out and we're going to continue to bring value to those doctors. I appreciate the two of you being on with me today. And that concludes this episode of Real Docs, where we bring real doctors together. We talk about real topics and we spotlight real solutions like Bottleneck today. Appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Grant.